Our lives are laid out on a road of bumps, turns, struggles, and more. How do we respond? How do we endure adversity for learning and growth? I'm Aubrey Johnson, and we'll explore these questions and more on the road to rediscovery. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Road to Rediscovery. I'm your host, Aubrey Johnson. The Road to Rediscovery is about reflecting on life lessons to learn and grow from them, and of course, pay it forward and uplift others who are struggling through dark times. Now, as you know, a few months ago, we released the electronic version of, that's right, this book right here, Relentless, Empowering Stories of Overcoming Adversity. And I am proud to say that now the hard copy is available. I tell you what, I had an absolute blast as a co-author, just entering my chapter in here of my struggles, my adversities. You get a glimpse into my journey, my story, and the lessons I've learned from those struggles. And not only my story, but my 19 counterparts, 19 co-authors that make up this anthology. If you are struggling through your own challenges and you want some sort of motivation or inspiration to help overcome your struggles, this book is for you. Now, on Amazon, it's available for $22, I believe, but you can contact me directly and get an autographed version of this book by yours truly for a reduced price. Just shoot me an email at roadtorediscoverypodcast@gmail.com. That's roadtorediscoverypodcast@gmail.com, and we'll make it happen. No doubt. We will make it happen. Okay. Now, with my special guest, okay, there's something I want to go out on a limb and say. I know I'm going to speak the obvious, okay, but just hear me out here. Listen, from the second that we're born into this world, right? Uh, we breathe. We all breathe in everything we do. See, I told you that would be the obvious, right? But we breathe in everything we do until the day we die. Now, imagine, just imagine becoming of a certain age, a certain level of awareness to where embrace we embrace just breathing, as simple as it sounds. We embrace breathing and we just think about the enhanced lives that can happen to us, you know? What more would we learn about ourselves? What could we achieve, more than what we even think we're capable of? And that's all by just getting in tune with your breathing and your breath work. Now, I'm not going to answer those questions, but my special guest has the expertise too. My special guest is a certified trauma informed breathwork facilitator. Through her practice, Rediscovering Breathwork, she helps others tune into their innate wisdom through facilitated guiding breath, visualization, and trauma informed support. We are going to dig into what all this means. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Meg Adams to the show. Meg, welcome to the show. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Aubrey. I'm really, really honored to be here.
Oh, thank you. We're honored to have you here as well. Really want to unpack this and not just about the details behind and the science behind breathing and breath work and how trauma plays a part in that, but how we can leverage this for for enduring our own struggles, right, in everyday life, and how we can have triumph over tragedy and just become a transformed person, right? So to start us off, if you can just give us a glimpse into just a brief part of your journey and then your inspiration behind this practice.
Okay. Um, yeah, what led me here was my own healing journey that I started.
Mhm.
I was having a lot of medical issues and like diagnosis, finding out that I had hypothyroidism and PCOS, but
Mm.
it was a lot of I hate to say it, but like some medical gaslighting that was occurring,
Yeah.
and feeling into my own body, knowing something wasn't right, or I was doing everything they were saying and trying to
Hmm.
figure that out.
Hmm.
And that's what started me on my advocating journey and speaking out on that and doing more research and trying to really feel heard um, within, and especially it's a lot harder for I'll say for women's health
Hmm.
to kind of feel heard. And
Hmm.
so through that led me to feeling more into tune with my body, but I was still feeling out the kinks of all that.
Yeah.
And then I had my own, sadly, my own birth loss that I had to have a it's known as a TFMR, but a termination for medical reasons.
Mm,
Um,
okay.
I was I was not well. I was losing a lot of blood, and it was just not very healthy for me. And I also have a daughter at home, so it was a kind of like a life or death decision, and
Oh,
having
yeah.
to do that, which led me to a lot of grief, remorse, trauma, going through that. I didn't want to do that.
Hmm. Hmm.
But then coming back into myself, I led into the practice of breath work with my therapist,
Hmm.
and it felt really familiar,
Hmm.
and I was trying to feel out why, um, but it felt like home.
Hmm.
And so I was coming back to home to myself, and also growing up with my mom who worked in anesthesia,
Hmm.
I was realizing a lot of the practices she was giving me as a child for anxiety was leading me back to breath work then, and I was like, "Oh, this feels right," and I lost it. Um,
Mm.
so then to come back and feel that,
Hmm.
uh, it was eye-opening, and like that missing puzzle piece of like, "Oh, I can talk to my body. I can come back and hear what my body's trying to say, and what's really like." Sometimes it's hard, like society makes you mute,
Yeah.
and, uh, you learn to, like, not speak up or not hold a certain boundary, and even just coming back to my breath and feeling into my own intuition that sometimes you don't feel like you can listen to a lot in
Right.
life,
Right.
coming back into that, um, led me down to the path of wanting to go and dive into this deeper and, really going, gung ho into the trauma-informed care of breathwork.
Thank you for sharing that, and I'm so sorry for that uh, tragedy and struggle you've gone through. But I love how you said starting the breath work and going into it, you felt something kind of familiar, you know, and that I don't know, that kind of tells me that it's returning you or recentering you to a space that you may have been, say, subconsciously, um, or consciously, but at any rate, it's familiar. And there's a that takes a tremendous amount of broadened self-awareness, I think. And there's a lot of things, it sounds like you had to put aside when it comes to the breath work, right? Um, there's a lot of distractions in the world. There's a lot of noise. The noise can
Mm,
play in our heads, even if we're in a quiet room. That noise can still be ringing through our heads, and we can't discover what you've discovered in your breath work if that noise is still ringing. So, um, uh, as part of that breath work, uh, what is a strategy or what is a way that that you have kind of set that noise to the side so that you have those revelations where you can listen to your body, you can speak to your body, as you mentioned earlier.
that's a really good question. So the noise, your your mind is gonna constantly wanna go,
Right.
and that's basically like its own survival thing where it's like, "No, like, we need to keep doing this because then when you sit in the calmness, it's kind of sometimes you're not used to it, so it can feel really
Yeah.
scary. So then your brain's like, "Oh, I'm gonna think about a to-do list. Oh, I'm gonna
Yeah.
do this."
Yeah.
Um, I want to say the first thing to really start to, honor in yourself, is to honor that that's still gonna happen, and
Okay.
that's still gonna occur, and that's still gonna be loud here and
Right.
there, but knowing to just come back into the breath, come back into you
Mhm.
is there's a duality in it, and feeling
I
into
see.
that, allows you to be in charge, and the loud brain is kinda like the passenger in the car. So you
Makes
can
Mhm.
yeah, so you're like, "Oh, it's okay. I understand that you're seeing all this happening or you're
Yeah.
feeling this,
Yeah.
but I've got the driver's seat
Mhm.
and we're gonna go through this together." But know that
Yeah.
it's there and seen and heard,
Mhm.
but you're in control. Ooh,
That makes a lot of sense. It truly does. And I guess the reason why it's making sense for me is is because, well, it's a two-pronged approach, right? Number one is um, the realist side. We're not going to pretend the noise isn't there, but according to what you're saying here, um, we are quite real in knowing that it's there, and we let it be the noise for what it's worth, but we are behind the wheel. We acknowledge the noise, and it has its time, but we are going down this path together with us behind the wheel, not the noise. The noise is the noisy passenger. um, I happen to do a lot of mindful meditation and breathing and so forth. And whether I'm performing an action or not, but when I'm sitting still in a room meditating and I'm breathing, um, I have some distracting thoughts that enter my head, and when I have those thoughts, I've learned to just acknowledge them for what they are and say, "Hey, that's okay." It's the how I was taught it was like a clouds going by in the
mm,
sky.
yes.
So when that cloud comes into your view, into your peripheral view, it's like the distraction. And then as it lightly floats and goes out, um, the essence of the noise and stuff is still there, but that cloud, that thought is now it's now past, and so we
Mm,
continue on the road. And that's just my goofy interpretation from what I've learned in starting this a few years back. But and that's how I kind of associate it with how with the response you gave. Is Would that be accurate, Meg?
yes, that one's
Okay.
perfect. The clouds passing by. Um,
Okay.
yeah, I like to imagine as that scenario a lot, like, but I'll be
Hmm.
laying in a field, and then just
Yeah.
you're like, "That's that thought. Okay, that's that thought." Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't have to
100%.
encompass you, and it doesn't
No.
that's not you. Like, that's
No.
just your thought passing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. For sure. And again, I'm asking, I know, a very obvious question, but um, for the benefit of the listeners to kind of set the framework, okay, and a little bit of context into, you know, why do we want to explore breath work? Why do we want to, discover or rediscover how to center ourselves with our breathing? Um, we talked about distractions in the world, right? With your clients, and you don't have to say specifically who, or but if you can give an example or two of what type of distractions that happen in this life that you've encountered, with your clients, um, that cause the need to learn breath work and to recenter themselves.
Mm. A lot of times, it's burnout
Gotcha.
and not filling their own cup.
Hmm.
Um, so feeling into that, I have a lot of parents, I have a lot of first responders.
Hmm.
So those are the most that I've dealt with, and that's just sometimes feeling into that and resourcing themselves that they weren't
Mhm,
aware that they needed to or
mhm,
felt that they should because they were like, "No, I need to be this. I need to be
mhm,
100%." And then you just feel so run down and you don't know why.
mhm.
So that's what led them to coming and doing the sessions with me.
Gotcha, gotcha. No, that makes a lot of sense. Um, I would think the clients or those you work with, there's different narratives that we all have, right? So, you may encounter some people who are very, very anxious,
Mm,
anxious driven, and I'm what kind of narrative or counter narrative, I guess you can say, in the practice of breath work would um, would these types of people need to tell themselves in the practice? Is it recurring thoughts or recurring affirmations of um, everything's going to be fine, can't worry about what you can't control? I'm just trying to see, what is a common practice to change that narrative. And I know it's not overnight. It takes time, but in the breath work and the trauma informed, which by the way I want us to unpack here in a minute. What does it take to change that narrative for someone who comes in very anxious driven?
mm. I myself can be a very anxious person. So
Hmm.
even just coming into that, and
Hmm.
speaking to that, it's the speaking to it and
Yeah.
like knowing like, okay, I do feel this and this is what's with me.
Hmm.
Um, and knowing that that doesn't dampen anything or lessen the experience, but at the acknowledgement
Right.
and to know that you're just sooner or later just small little increments of trusting yourself
Mhm, mhm.
and just learning to trust that alone time within yourself and those small moments of finding that little intuition, that little whisper voice, because the world can be so loud. So
Right.
you're not gonna it may be one day you don't feel it the first time, but
Mhm,
sooner or later, you start to hear it more and you start to actually feel it,
mhm.
and, that can really help calm the anxiety and calm the anxious, because then you are aware that that is with you always. You are with you always.
Right.
So even during an anxious moment or an anxiety attack,
Mhm,
feeling that and going, "Okay, but I'm not alone. Like, I have me. I have these practices,"
mhm.
and working through that and just knowing that you're not alone.
Yeah, again, it seems to come back around to self-awareness, but not just
Mm,
self-awareness. In working with you, Meg, having the tools and the knowledge, when something like an anxiety attack occurs, to be mindful. Number one, as you said, acknowledge that it's here, and then two, being equipped with the tools in which you guide them to go through, trying to just to get you by. You may not overcome it overnight or immediately, but to get you by. And which leads me to a question here, Meg. The what works for different things work for different people, right?
mhm,
And we can have multiple people, let's say five, who have severe anxiety problems. In working with these individuals, one person, uh, and again, I'm genuinely asking, okay, is there a breakthrough or is there an epiphany that happens when that light bulb comes on from the breath work, from the practice? Or is it something that just gradually gains traction over time to where after say I'm just going to put a time out there because it's different for everyone, but after 6 months or so, the person turns around and says, wow, look at that trail I just blazed, of
mm.
all this time. I don't feel like I did when I first started, so is there a breakthrough, an epiphany, or is it a gradual traction type of uh, progress to transformation? I guess is what I'm asking.
A lot of the times I wanna say because, sessions can be here and there smattering times,
Yeah.
like, throughout, so that they can be gradual, but I
Hmm.
have led sessions, even in groups, at, like, studios and stuff, where some people are just like, "I don't know why I was crying." Like,
Yeah.
and but it just allows your body that release, and it's not that, like,
Yes.
crying's great, your tears are actually what needs to come out, like, don't
Right.
hold back crying.
Right.
Um, but sometimes they're like, "I don't know what happened, but
Hmm.
I feel like 10 pounds lighter, like, I feel like there's this weight off of me."
Yeah.
And so sometimes it has those moments, which it definitely like, there are times where you'll go through a breath and you're like, "Oh, man." Like,
Yeah.
that was really powerful, or
Yeah.
and depending on there's all different types of breath patterns.
Hmm.
Some of them are very activating,
Hmm.
and you might feel like you're, like, kinda, like, tripping, like, you're just like,
Yeah. Yeah.
"Ooh." Like, we say, like, we get high on our own supply because it's our own
Uh-huh.
breath, because you are the drug.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes you feel like that and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm ready to go. I could go do
Hmm.
this." And sometimes it's just like, "Okay, I really
Yeah.
felt a heavy day today,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna feel into that and acknowledge that heavy day today, and I'm allowing my rest."
There
And
you
so
go.
it's very gradual in both. And I also like to lead my breathworks with a PMR, a progressive muscle relaxation beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
And so that allows you to bring awareness to each body part from like your feet up to your head,
Yes.
little by little by bringing tension and then releasing it with the breath. And that allows you to sometimes almost put a image in your brain of like, "This is my body. Okay, this is where I hurt. This is where I'm feeling tension. This is where I'm feeling some stress." And you kind of can see it, and then you can, like, allow that breath in to those parts that may need that little bit of extra love.
That's beautiful, and in my way, I relate to it as a meditation body scan, from the
Mm,
top of my
mhm,
head down, and thank you for sharing that because I was gonna ask you with the breath work, what specifically, what parts of us are we honing in on, right? There, of course, are tangible parts of us um, like our breathing, our heartbeat, those are
mhm.
tangible things. And then there's, I guess, for lack of a better term, an intangible, like our spirit,
Yeah.
our emotions. These are things that we're tapping into. That it sounds like from the breath work, but that's yeah, that's I understand now. I think I understand. And you mentioned groups and group workshops.
Mhm.
Have you worked with groups and workshops on a say a personal team basis as well as a professional basis? In other words, a team at say a corporate institution that may need to learn some cohesiveness, maybe to impact their productivity or to improve it, or say just a group of friends that just want to, just vibe together. Have you worked in both capacities, or is it just one style?
I have. I have done, I can do both via Zoom, like
Hmm.
online, web classes and in
Hmm.
person. So I have done at yoga studios and at a friend's house. She had a group of people, and we just did a
Okay.
small little it's almost like having like a little
Yeah.
bit of a yoga time at home.
Oh. Okay.
Um, and then at the studios, I added more education, in there. I've also done, a Zoom call via a corporate meeting
Hmm.
to prep them and kinda just calm them,
Okay.
before they're meeting together as, like, a cohesive.
Understood. Understood. So, sounds like in these group activities, um, uh, there may be a common goal or common outcome that you're helping them or guiding them to attain. I was wondering, if it was that common goal, or if different people had different outcomes they want from this activity, would that work? Do you get both, or is it always a common goal for the group?
Both. I say, I speak to it as, like, intention setting,
Yeah.
and so we can have a group, like, collective intention, together,
Hmm.
kind of, like, more themed, if that's what it was for the web call that I had.
Yeah.
Um, they had invited me for that, but also as just out and just within the group itself, I could say you could bring your own intention,
Hmm.
and that's what you can hold within yourself.
Right.
And I can guide through that, but I don't need to know, like, the intention that you have compared to the intention that, person B has and person
Hmm.
C. They could all have their own, and just feeling in it together, knowing that you're in a safe space.
Yes.
But
Yes.
that you are having your own intention, and you don't have to feel like you're pressured into someone else's or
Right.
anything like that. What comes with you and comes on your plate that day,
Yeah.
we'll feel into that.
Gotcha. Gotcha. No, that makes sense. Thank you for that. I have one more question, then I would love to dig into this trauma informed component, if you don't mind. The This practice can. At what point do we I guess expect to see a change in behavior? Um, is it that change in behavior that we're looking for, or what is the basis to? I guess what I'm asking is, what is the basis through going through the work to 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 get to that foundation of transformation, right? Um, we'll use the anxiety example again. Someone who's very anxious driven, um, going through breath work, meditation, and at some point, I don't, and I may have asked this before, but um, it's either a gradual change or it's a breakthrough. But um, an old saying is where when you begin to hurt or from a broken heart, that is when you start to heal.
Mm.
And so I guess I'm asking, at what point in this practice um, is the foundation to transforming? Is it when you start breath work, or is it like at just some point in the middle of the practice? Um, Not sure if I'm making sense with this question, but
I
trying to find that determining spot where someone is like, where you're like, as a professional, hey, they're now getting on the road to their transformation.
um, Sometimes it's even the first step is even just the initial, first session,
Hmm.
because that's already a huge step in wanting to, oops, sorry, in wanting to feel into that.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is gradual and just feeling into a moment, because sometimes I'll do calls that are a lot smaller, like,
Hmm.
where you'll only be in a breath pattern for 8 minutes.
Hmm.
That's it, but I call them the integrative sessions, but that's just enough for you to be like, "Alright, I've come back to my body.
Yeah.
Okay." And I've done those for people within their car, like, not while they're
Yeah.
driving, but, like
Right. Right.
they needed their lunch break and they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I just had a rough day."
Hmm.
So I've those just even small little ones like that, and feeling into knowing I need a moment to come back to myself
Yeah.
is already pretty, I feel pretty transformational, especially in this day and age, in this world, um, where it's hard to, because everything wants the hustle, uh,
Oh, yes.
lifestyle.
Hustle.
So
Yeah.
hustle culture
Yeah.
is toxic. And,
Yes.
so to come back into that moment and be like grounding just
Yeah.
for a little bit, you can really ground yourself with your breath.
Yes.
And that can just, that in itself, to me, I want to applaud and just say that that's really transformational in and of itself, to just to be like, I'm feeling really stressed out.
Yeah.
Why am I feeling so stressed out? And then start practicing those deep breaths is
Yes.
already so many steps forward in the right direction.
That's awesome. You understood my question, and I rambled for like 5 minutes trying to make sure I was clear in what I was asking, and I wasn't, and you knew what I was asking, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And I'm gonna apologize once again, Meg, because I have just one more question. Then I want to unpack this trauma-informed component. Okay. I want to know, are there our body has senses, right? Taste, smell, touch, sight. I mean, are there any certain stimuli to our senses that can help in our breath work, that can help in our focus, that can help in our just concentration and help us foster that level of self-awareness?
I always like to, if it's okay for you and it doesn't affect you,
Yeah,
sometimes people can get headaches, but
yeah,
I'm always for, like, if you want some incense or light a candle, your sense
yeah,
of smell can really help um, bring some grounding,
yeah,
even if it's something like just holding a thing of a little sachet of lavender and
yeah.
not lighting something that has toxins or anything, but just holding that,
Right, right.
um, that can really, really help, especially, and also during a breathwork session, you may like, I'll invite you to lay down a lot
Hmm.
because if it's, like, a longer breath, you may get a little dizzy. So
Yeah.
just having a comfortable blanket, so, like, senses of touch, having
Hmm.
that comfort with you.
Hmm.
Yeah, those are the senses I feel, uh, are definitely helpful
Yeah.
and can help, add more color to the experience.
Okay. Okay. I can see that. I can see that. Some incense, oils, maybe, as long as it doesn't bother
Oils,
you originally. Yeah.
yeah, as long as it doesn't bother you. I know some people
Okay.
it affects, but yeah, as long as it doesn't bother you and
Yeah.
feel into that, I personally like to have an incense or a candle or some
Hmm.
essential oils. So, that's
Gotcha.
all of your preference.
Wonderful. No, thank you for that. Thank you. Okay, now can you please help us understand and let's unpack this trauma informed component. Okay. I'll be honest with you, I was kind of struggling in trying to understand how this fits in with breath work, how the two work together, or does one trigger the other? I'm not sure,
Mm,
but for the benefit of the listeners, if you can just kind of unpack that component and how it fits into the breath work equation.
absolutely. So, I personally, uh, feel very strongly in trauma-informed care,
Hmm.
um, and it's when leading in breathwork and experiencing breathwork, there can be some times where you may hear or see a video where someone's guiding and they're like,
Yeah.
"Okay, now breathe. Now do this. Now da da."
Hmm.
That's very commanding.
Hmm. Hmm.
And sometimes, especially if you've had CPTSD, PTSD, or a traumatic event, some of that can be
Hmm.
really triggering, and you're not going to feel safe
Hmm.
in your body in that episode, in that time.
Right. Right.
And so to do trauma informed care or breathwork with the trauma informed lens, almost everything is done via invitation. So I
Mm,
will invite you. I'm not going to say, I need you to do 4 deep breaths. No, I invite you when it feels ready to maybe deepen your breath. And that's
mhm,
your body, like your sovereignty.
mhm,
You are in charge of your body. I am not in charge of how you want to breathe.
mhm,
And so that allows you that control and that safety within yourself.
mhm.
Uh, And just to feel that and knowing that can make the session, uh, 10 times better because you're starting to learn that trust and learn to feel safe within yourself. And there's a lot that can come up even during a breathwork session, like, certain breaths could even be anxiety inducing because 'cause they're so activating.
Right, right.
Because some of them are like hyperventilation. So you
Mhm,
may feel like you're having an anxiety attack. So to then have a trauma-informed lens through that,
mhm,
I can help guide you through those times and understand and see how your breathing is to then guide you through, the session itself. to not have it be more activating.
I love it. Meg, you just took self-awareness to a whole new level, for me at least, a whole new level. And I have to commend you for the work that you do. And I know we've only scratched the surface in this conversation, compared to the immerse work that you do. But I have to say, to have the level of self-awareness as you do, okay, in the possibility of the people you work with having had PTSD potentially, and how the commands for the breathing and the breath work, uh, depending on how they come across, it could be counterproductive. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, we're in this breathing exercise, we're doing this breath work, but they're shouting these commands down at me, which I am kind of impacted psychologically because of what I've gone through, and it basically undoes what the breath work is is to
Yes.
do.
Mhm.
But for you to have the self-awareness in how you guide these people, um, and there's another operative word you use, trust. It establishes and sustains trust when you invite them to breathe. They control their body. When they want to breathe, they breathe, right? And so, thank you so much for clarifying that for me, for the listeners. That was one key area I was truly, truly hoping that we could cover and make sure people understood what trauma informed means. And again, in my mind, self awareness is it's a foundational piece for transformation for me. You have to be
Mm.
self-aware before you're anything else, before you're grateful, before you practice humility, before performing service to others. So self-awareness is foundational. Again, that's in my head. And so I weigh a lot of clout on self-awareness, and you just taken it to the next level in how you've
Oh, thank
explained
you.
the trauma informed. So thank you for that, Meg. And would like to know, how can the listeners follow you, uh, connect with you, learn more about your great work, and maybe even set up a consultative session.
I do, yes, so I have rediscoveringbreathwork.com is my website, and on there, I offer several different options, free consultation, where we can just discuss,
Hmm.
and then integrative meditative sessions, and then a
Hmm.
private one, which allows more, like, deep, involvement and journaling,
Hmm.
so all how you feel it out. I
Hmm.
also am on Instagram at rediscovering_meg_.
Love it. Love it. And I love, I don't know, when I first, and we've talked about this off the camera and off the mic, but when I saw your name on Instagram, rediscovering
Mm.
underscore Meg, rediscovering Meg, to me it just clicked for like a book title, a book title that leaves you intrigued to learn more about what is Meg rediscovering?
Mm.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, I just had to kind of add that out there because
That's
that was one of the things I felt from the universe that pulled me to you, when learning about you and following you. So everyone out there, I want to highly recommend that you follow Meg Adams at rediscovering underscore Meg underscore on Instagram. Okay, take a look at her insights when it comes to breath work and the science of breath work. She has certain posts up there that have a breakdown on the science of breath work and the
mhm.
science of breathing, and just different parts of your body, in your from your brain and your nervous system, that is just enhanced when you have controlled breathing. Um, and I'm serious when I say this. You should follow Meg Adams, because you will learn so much more about yourself and what you're capable of if you enhance, or if you embrace the simple act of breathing and how much
Mm.
power it has, more than you know, because we all take it for granted because it's what we do when we enter this world.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Meg, I'm going to put all of that information, your social media handles, your web address in the episode show notes so the listeners can um, click connect with you while they're listening to this awesome conversation. And I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. I really had a blast and such a joy talking with you, Meg. So thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much, Robbie. It was a delight, and it was awesome to talk with you and share this with you.
Oh, thank you. Likewise. And let's stay in touch. I'd love to have you come back on
Yes.
the shows sometime down the line. If you have that book, Rediscovering
Uh,
Meg.
uh, I am in a small little collective of a story that's going to be released. It's not out yet, but like how you
Yeah.
have where your chapter,
Yeah.
um, they invited several moms to share their story of motherhood via
Oh,
adoption,
wonderful.
loss, everything. And
Oh,
I was selected for mine. So I'll
you're
be letting you know when that book comes out.
Please do, Meg. I truly and in my heart of hearts, really, really hope you can keep me in the loop when that does release. I would love a copy of it. I will buy a copy of it. It takes a tremendous amount of vulnerability and strength and transparency for
Mm.
someone to come forth and share this story. And with all the guests I've had on the show, I'm always very sensitive to walking my guests through explaining what they've gone through in their struggles, because I understand in some cases they could relive it. And
Mhm.
I don't want to go to a damaging or a space where it's too uncomfortable for them, and no one can tell you when you're ready to tell your story, right?
Right.
You are the one at, behind the wheel in telling your story, and when you're ready to tell that story, if you're ready at all, or if anyone's ready at all. So I have a tremendous amount of respect and compassion for those having gone through this and still finding the strength and courage to share it. So for what it's worth, I truly do.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in and listening. And look, as always, we want all of our listeners to know that when dealing with life's struggles, you're never alone, and there's always hope. Please share this show with someone who you feel needs inspiration, motivation, and support. And also, please know we're all on this journey of life together, and it sure feels good having you on the road with me. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll chat again soon. We really hope you enjoyed this episode of The Road to Rediscovery. We'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email at roadtorediscoverypodcast@gmail.com and leave us any questions or comments you may have.